We need to preserve. There's a peace in us, which is leading us through the journey, the purposeful journey of life. It needs to be always alert, always connected with the mission of life, and not being dragged down, contaminated by the energy of death. Go to our website, which is HebrewLearningCircles.org. Go to Jewish Resources, scroll down to Parsha Videos, and you'll find the source sheet right there. Leviticus chapter 21, verse 1 says the following: Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, and Adonai said to Moses, Emor el HaKohanim bnei Aaron, speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron, V'amarta alehem, and say to them, Lenefesh lo itama be'amav, none shall defile himself for any dead person among his kin. And it actually doesn't literally say dead person. It says it's implied the vital force, or that without vital force among his people. And that is important. We'll see in a moment how that becomes important. So the Ishbitzer here is going to ask a few questions. First of all, why are the priests of the temple forbidden from tending to the dead? And generally, just to bring this a little bit more, broaden the context, the Parsha continues to detail the situations in which a priest is not allowed to be involved, and that is when we know the tradition that priests, people with last name Cohen, which means priests in Hebrew, are not allowed into a cemetery. That the tradition is sourced exactly in this verse, and generally the priests are discouraged or actually forbidden from tending to the dead, touching the dead, being involved with the process of processing or tending to another human being who has passed. And the question is why? Another question is, why does the Torah not use the word dead in this verse, the word met? But rather it uses the term vital force, nefesh. And that is telling. We're going to see in a moment where the Ishbitzer is going to talk about that. He's going to define what nefesh means in actually Kabbalistic context. And we're going to get into a little bit of the different levels of the soul and what's the meaning of the presence or absence of each one of those levels. What would be the risk if a priest had tended to a dead body? What is this about? And the last question the Ishbitzer is going to address is, how does the state of death contradict life's purpose by definition, which is, according to tradition, the reformation of the living soul. All right, so here's in the words of the Ishbitzer himself. He starts by quoting the verse, Emor el HaKohanim, say to the priests, Lenefesh lo itamayim, and one should not, a priest should not be defiled by a dead person. Ki haKohen nivchar she'al yado yetuknu v'yeratzu kol ma'aseh Yisrael lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because this is related to the fact that the priest has been chosen the role of priests is selected to that through it, all the acts of Israel will be reformed and become favored again before the Holy One, blessed be. So he jumps right into it. Here's the purpose of the priest, which actually refers to the purpose of life on earth itself, is the reformation, the rectification, the improvement of the state of the soul before its creator. V'lachen hizhir al tumat emet. This is why the Torah is giving us a specific warning, specific concern about the possibility of being defiled when we come in contact with the dead. In fact, that is not only it's not only the priest that is defiled, but everyone is defiled. When we go to a funeral, you will notice that on the way out, by the gate of the cemetery, there are sinks with little ritual hand washing cups, and it's customary to wash our hands. It's customary to rinse our hands, which is spiritual purifying of the hands. This is not cleaning physical contamination, but this is a spiritual purifying of the hands before we enter the house of mourning. And this comes from, this is related to exactly this same topic, that all of us are defiled by the dead, but for the priest, it's particularly critical, and we'll see why. Because death, or the dead, points to the opposite of the priest's purpose, which is to reform the living soul. Moshe nimtza ba'adam nefesh ruach unshama v'shlemut lechiyut hanefesh. And now he's going to explain why. This is related to the fact that in a living person, we have three levels of soul: nefesh, ruach, and neshama, in a ascending order. So nefesh, the vital force, is the lowest level of soul. Ruach, which corresponds to feeling, to the heart, to the emotionality, is the second up, and neshama, which corresponds to the brain, to consciousness, to intellect, is one level higher than that. And all three, in fact, I just want to mention that there are 5 levels of soul, but in the individual person, as it manifests in ordinary life, we're usually dealing only with the first 3 levels, not Chaya and Yechida, which are higher than that. I just wanted to bring the fullness of the Kabbalistic theory that he is that the Ishbitzer here is referring to. V'shlemut lachayot hanefesh, and the 2 higher levels, ruach and neshama, which you could call spirit and soul. So we have vital force, spirit, and soul, are complement and make the nefesh, the vital force, whole. Eino rak ksheitchaber el haruach me'haneshama. The vital force, this is really the biology, the life that's in the body at the level of biological functions, is only complete when the spirit and soul are combined together with it. And he's going to illustrate that with an example from our experience. And he says, Lachen balayla, Shitpardu haruach v'neshama. That's why at night, when we sleep, when the spirit and soul depart from us, Yishaer nefesh bli shum koch pe'ula. What remains is the vital force without any ability to act. In other words, when we're asleep, we are unconscious, right? Our body is alive, but we're not conscious, we're not purposeful, we're not willful, we can't do anything, right? We can only be passive, and in that passive state of minimal biological functions continuing on automatic pilot, you could say. ולזה מברכים בבוקר ברכת זוקף כפופים. And this is why when we wake up in the morning, we say a special blessing, amongst many others, but this one is the blessing of offering gratitude to the Creator for having brought the bent over upright, right? Straightened up the bent over. Zokef kefufim. And that's an interesting interpretation of Zokef kefufim, apropos, because bent over, typically we think of somebody who's bent over as perhaps tired or in a bad mood or ill. And when we come back into full upright, right, full vigor, usually intuitively we think that blessing is referring to that, to healing from disease, perhaps, from healing from emotional heaviness, etc. But here, the interpretation for this bracha that the Shpitzer is offering is actually straightening up from the laying down position, which is in the fetal position. So those of us most of us who sleep in the fetal position, so it's kind of unraveling from the fetal position and becoming straight up into a sitting or a standing position. This is the image, right? Coming from, in other words, also moving from the unconsciousness of sleep. In other words, the absence of the two higher levels of spirit and soul, to full alertness, full liveliness, which is upright, where the spirit and soul converge again with the vital force into the full experience of life. Because when the spirit and soul reconnect themselves to the vital force, and the body is kefu gam et hanefesh ve'et haguf shekfufim bli peula, that will cause both the vital force and the body to straighten up, be upright. Ukmo shimatzeh be'adam kenu b'chlal Yisrael. Now this is interesting. He's saying, if you look at this process in a singular person, it's a metaphor for the entire people of Israel. Shehakohen hu harosh lichlal Yisrael. Because the priest is as if the head, metaphorically, of the totality of Israel. Head meaning the seat of the soul, which is the intellect, consciousness, willfulness, etc. וכמו המחשבה לנפש האדם. And it is like the priest is like the thought process compared the thought process for the vital force of the person, of a singular person, kenu lachlal. And it is the same for the collective body, the body collective of Israel. ואחריו כל ישראל במדרגות שונים, זה למעלה מזה. And underneath the priest, who is the head, or the leader, right, the highest rung, extend the rest of Israel at different rungs, in different rungs, one on top of the other. Just like the organs of a human being that start from the top, from the head, and they extend down through the rest of the body to the organs of action and doing, such as the hands and the feet, that would be considered the perimeters or the edges, right, of the entire system of the body. ובעת שהאדם ער, אז הראש הוא המנהיג את כל איבריו. And when a person is awake, then the head leads all the rest of the organs. כמאמר הבעל שם טוב, as the Baal Shem Tov, the Holy Baal Shem Tov said, במקום שהמחשבות של אדם מחשבות, שם הוא האדם כולו. In a place where a person's thoughts are going, that is where the full person is. In other words, we are where our thoughts are. I can imagine I can go with my thoughts to the stars. That means I am at the stars. I can think about vacation. The moment I'm having those thoughts, I am on vacation. That is, by the way, the trick of Shabbat, meditation, etc. But we're not going to digress. כשאדם ישן, אין חילוק בין הראש לשאר האיברים. But when a person is sleeping, there's no difference between the head and the rest of the organs. In other words, the head has no control or no leadership. לכן הזהיר שלא יטמא למת. That's why the Torah is concerned and forbidding us not to be defiled by the dead. And by us, I mean not us, but the priest. לפי שהוא ממונה, ויש בכוחו לתקן כל המעשים שיעשו ישראל. Because the priest is in charge and has the potential, has the role of reforming all the actions that the people of Israel will perform. Umet more al hahefech, and death points in the opposite direction. Ki lo yimatzeh bo shum koach peula, because in death there is no potential for action whatsoever. Litaken et asher ivet b'chayav, or the ability to reform that which had been corrupted in one's life. You can see here how this is very, very essential to life's purpose. So there's something about death. There's something about death that is contradictory to the purpose of life. In death, we cannot correct, we cannot reform any of the corruptions that we need to in past lives or in this life. Only in life, only in living, only with full consciousness, full awakeness, can we do that work? Can we fulfill the purpose of our lives? And so it is, metaphorically, so it is with the priest, that the priest has to be completely in his fullness and cannot be contaminated or influenced by the passivity and the inactivity of the state of death. In other words, for the body collective of Israel to be fully awake and fully fulfilling its purpose, the priest, the leader, especially the spiritual leader, needs to be undistracted. והכהן מיוחד לתקן מעשה ישראל, and the priest is set aside, is dedicated to reform the acts of the people of Israel, leval idach mehem nedach, in order that none of Israel are set apart or failing in the purpose of their life. We have an intuitive aversion for death. It's not like a far-fetched ask to ask people not to come in contact with the dead. For most of us, it's like it's like I don't want to come close to a dead body. Although we do that because of our love and our respect for people whose life has ended, and we tend to the body. We ritually wash it. People who have expertise with that, we bury the body. We sit shiva. We give due honor, and we sit in our grief. We sit in the shock of loss that happens around death, whether it's a relative or even when it's a stranger. It stirs something in us. And what the Torah is telling us is that for the priest, which represents the level of purpose and consciousness and mind, at that level, we need to not be contaminated. We need to preserve, there's a peace in us, which is leading us through the journey, the purposeful journey of life. It needs to be always alert, always connected with the mission of life, and not being dragged down, contaminated by the energy of death. On this spiritual journey, there's a place, or there's a necessity for purism, for complete and absolute, optimistic, purposeful intentionality that is disregarding the possibility of anything that opposes it. That makes sense. We're not there all the time. We shouldn't be there all the time, but we need to preserve that potential, and that's what the priest stands for. It's the part in our system that is never asleep. That's always on, even if our body is asleep. It is always focused. It's always on. It's always leading, and it's always at the highest state of being that is available to us. And that takes cultivation, that takes spiritual practice, that takes Shabbat, that takes contemplation, and that takes avoidance of certain energies. right? That is what a sanctuary is about. That is how we, as part of the spiritual journey, we protect, we guard against contact with certain energies, represented by the energy of death. With that, we're going to conclude for today. May we all be blessed to rise higher and higher and be cultivate the fullness of the priest within us. Shalom for now. Please do come back next Wednesday. Shalom. Today, thank you, everybody. Again, click subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything. We really appreciate that. Like to have that extra layer of connection with you. Like and subscribe. Come back. Mayim rabim lo yuchlu